It was a costly Sunday regarding injuries for the Pats, but reportedly not as costly as it could have been. Let's start there. This is Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening? I am your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, been covering the Pats for the past 16 years. Also the co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles and a sports radio veteran. Welcome to Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Thanks to all of you, your team every day. On today's show, we have some all 22 takeaways, including specifically what went wrong inside the 5-yard line for the Pats offense on Sunday. Also, we'll tell you how the Bengals attacked the Pats with their run game. But first, some positive news on the injury front. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You never want to lose offensive linemen. You never want to lose a single offensive lineman, let alone multiple offensive linemen in one game. You never want to lose the left side of your offensive line, especially if your quarterback is right-handed. You don't want to lose rookie offensive linemen because they're continuing to learn and develop, which is crucial throughout that first season. But when we look at Will Campbell and Jarrod Wilson and their injuries from the game on Sunday, we have what I would put it as not terrible news, because it's not great news. Great news would be, hey, they're not actually injured. Something crazy happened. They thought they were injured. They're not injured. They're going to be back against the Giants on Monday Night Football. That would be spectacular news. That would be the great news. But the not terrible news is what we have heard from the latest reports regarding Campbell and Wilson. Ian Rappaport posted on Monday, Patriots left tackle Will Campbell is believed to have suffered an MCL sprain and will have an MRI on his knee. He's a candidate for injured reserve with the hope he returns when it counts the most. Now, I do want to give credit to somebody who had this before any of the national insiders had it, before people were tweeting about it, before Mike Vrabel was discussing the situation about the injuries to, both Will Campbell and Jarrod Wilson. And the person who deserves credit, and I will give that person the credit, is Daniel Rotman, who is known by other names, what he does online on Twitter as the Scout the NFL, the retired founder of ScoutTheNFL.com. Daniel Rotman was the first person who said that Will Campbell and Jarrod Wilson, which we'll get to in a moment, had sprains and that the injuries were not as serious as we might have initially thought, especially watching the reaction from Campbell and Wilson. So shout out to Daniel Rotman, who had that first. Mike Vrabel, of course, met with the media on Monday, and he was asked about Will Campbell. This is transcribed by Mike Reese of ESPN. Quote, he won't be out there this week. It's going to be a couple weeks. We'll have to make a decision here on the roster to see how long that will be and go from there. But it's nothing that's going to hopefully put him out for the entire season, unquote. Now, when Mike Vrabel says it's going to be a couple weeks and then follows that with, we'll have to make a decision here on the roster, he's talking about IR. He's talking about roster spots. How long is Will Campbell going to be out? Is it going to be long enough to justify putting him on IR? Or can he possibly come back before the next 4 games so you don't put him on the IR and you get your starting left tackle back ASAP? If you're wondering about MCL sprains, quick little Google search for you. A grade 1 sprain can keep somebody out anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. A grade 2 sprain can keep someone out 4 to 6 weeks. And a grade 3 sprain is 6 to 8 plus weeks. So if Mike Vrabel's talking about trying to figure out the roster manipulation and what to do with Will Campbell, whether IR is the solution or not, you have to imagine that it's more likely that Will Campbell has a grade 1 or grade 2 sprain, and they're trying to figure out the severity of it. Now, of course, he could have a grade 2 to grade 3 sprain, but now you're talking about a month to 2+ months. And it just feels like if it was that severe, then they would just put him on IR and make that decision. Now, maybe they do it, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. The initial reaction, I talked about it on the live post game, the initial reaction from Will Campbell, the initial reaction from his teammates, getting carted off to the locker room with a towel around his head. It certainly felt like this could have been an ACL, but the early reports and the way what Mike Vrabel had to say to the media certainly feels like the Patriots dodged a bullet and Campbell dodged a bullet. And Campbell is young. He's 21 years old. We've talked about that before. He probably hasn't gone through many, if any, major injuries in his career. And so his reaction could have just been the shock of it all and him fearing the worst. What about Jared Wilson? Back to Ian Rappaport. Jared Wilson suffered a high ankle sprain. He's considered week to week, while most high ankle sprains are 4 to 6 weeks. The hope is this is on the shorter side. So 4 to 6 weeks, but Ian Rappaport says the hope, obviously he's getting this from somewhere maybe in the building, maybe from Jared Wilson's agent, but the hope is that this high ankle sprain will cost Jared Wilson closer to 4 weeks than 6 weeks. Mike Giardi transcribed Mike Vrabel talking about Wilson to the media. Quote, "We'll see how the week of practice goes or see how the rehab goes, see how he responds there," unquote. So Vrabel's answers lead you to believe that Campbell is more likely headed to the IR than Wilson, and Wilson could be back maybe within the next few weeks. Maybe he's back by Buffalo after the bye week. I do not expect either guy to be out there against the Giants. But, the best guess, the estimate from me, and take this for what it's worth, I think that Will Campbell will aim for the playoffs. You're probably looking at a best case scenario of 6 to 7 weeks. So I think Campbell will be aiming for the playoffs, just get back by that first playoff game. You might use extra caution against the Jets and the Dolphins at the end of the year because neither of those teams are going to be playing for anything. Meanwhile, I think Wilson could be back by Baltimore, maybe even Buffalo, but I would look towards more Baltimore than Buffalo, which is, of course, you've got the Giants, you've got the bye week, you've got Buffalo, you've got Baltimore. That would have Jared Wilson back in practicing within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And I think the repetitions mean more for Wilson because it's a new position he's playing. He's also messing around with a new stance, which Greg Bedard wrote about at Boston Sports Journal just about a week or so ago. So what do you do while these two guys are out? Well, Vederian Lowe, you have to imagine, even though Mike Vrabel kind of left it up in the air with the media, you have to imagine that Vederian Lowe will get the start at left tackle over Marcus Bryant, the 7th-round pick from Missouri. Lowe has over 1,000 NFL snaps at left tackle. You want some of that steadiness and that experience. I would also say, watching the All-22, which we'll dive into a little bit deeper later on, I did not think that Lowe was bad against Cincinnati. He had a couple of plays he wants back. He went for a cut block and kind of just stumbled and bumbled and fell, took us over tea kettle. But the matchup, of course, against Cincinnati helps. But I did not think that Lowe was a mess. And I also did not think that Ben Brown, who replaced Jared Wilson, I did not think he was a mess at left guard. I did not think he was bad against Cincy. Now, of course, he's a natural center. So if anything happens with Garrett Bradbury, you'd have to imagine Caden Wallace would be the next guy up at left guard, and you would slide Brown back to his natural position. But that's going a little too far down the road. It's unfortunate that your starting left tackle and your starting left guard went out with injuries that are going to cost them multiple weeks and went out during the same game. And it's unfortunate that those two guys are likely going to miss Buffalo and Baltimore, but it could have been much worse. We could have been talking about they're done for the rest of the season. We could have been talking about what will these guys look like in 2026? When can they get back? Will they be healthy for camp? So all things considered, this is really, good news. And certainly, as I termed it earlier, not terrible news about both Campbell and Wilson. Well, we all know that Cincy ran the ball against the Pats pretty well, but we'll tell you how they did it. We also have a serious concern about the edge position All that next. This is Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. You always have a shot to enjoy the game and the action. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. I love same-game parlays. Maybe like Jalen's points, rebounds, and assists. You can look to combine all of them to get a better and bigger payday. It keeps every game exciting. It is FanDuel, of course, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Again, FanDuel giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first bet wins. What are you waiting for? Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. On this week of Thanksgiving, we're going to try to get these episodes out a little earlier than usual. And speaking of thanks, thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. And don't forget, you're watching on YouTube, to click that thumbs up. Helps us a lot. So don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment your thoughts on this. I would say absolutely positive news regarding Will Campbell and Jared Wilson. So let me know how you feel about that. Throw a comment in. That also helps us with the algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe as we march towards 8,000 subs here with Locked On Patriots. So on Friday's episode, as we previewed the Cincinnati Patriots game, I talked about how the Patriots, a big reason why they were 9-2 going into Sunday was because they were winning in the trenches. Now, we talked about the offensive line injuries. Up next, we got to look at the defensive line. And after watching the All-22, we try to figure out what Cincinnati did against the Patriots' defensive line in the front seven that gave them problems. And where did the Patriots struggle? Because they obviously struggled more on Sunday against Cincinnati than they have in the run game, especially before Cincinnati. Now, some of the issues, clearly, let's not be disingenuous. Let's not be ridiculous. Clearly, some of the issues, if not maybe the majority of the issues, you were without Milton Williams to begin with, and then you lost Chaisson Tonga very early in the game. Tonga tried to come back, was unable to stay in the game, so now we keep an eye on him. Not much of an update regarding Tonga's injury during all these reports on Monday, but you were without Milton Williams, and then you were without, for most of the game, Chaisson Tonga, and that meant your run defense could be an issue, and it was. Evan Lazar, Patriots.com, writes, Bengals running back Chase Brown became the first 100-yard rusher versus the Pats this season, carrying the ball for 107 yards on 19 carries. Over the last 3 games, New England has allowed 5.2 yards in a plus 0.09 EPA per rush with a 58.3 success rate. If you're wondering what all of that means, well, I'll compare them as Evan Lazar did. The first 9 weeks, when the run defense was absolutely nails, they were holding run games to 3.6 yards per rush. So for the first 9 weeks, it was 3.6 yards per rush. The most recent 3 games, it's been 5.2 yards per rush over those last 3 games. When you look at EPA per rush, when the Patriots were the best run defense in football, it was a minus 0.14. In the last 3 games, it's been a plus 0.09. When you look at success rate, when the Patriots were the best run defense in football, the success rate of the opposing run game was 38.1%. In the last 3 weeks, that's jumped more than 20% to 58.3%. So all of those numbers tell us one thing. The past 3 games that we have watched, the Patriots defense, their run defense has declined. So what's going on? Well, again, first let's look at the Cincinnati game. And just from a personnel standpoint, the interior defensive line, Eric Gregory, former Cincinnati Bengal, And I would also say Jeremiah Farms were not particularly great against the run. Cincinnati also did something that other teams have done. They attacked Caleb Chaisson, his edge, and they also attacked Elijah Ponder in the run game. Now, Elijah Ponder made a couple of plays last week against the run and was able to kind of set the edge. He wasn't always great against Cincinnati. So the Bengals looked at the film and they said, Eric Gregory, Jeremiah Farms, we could push those guys around a little bit. And Ponder, Chaisson, whoever is out there at that edge opposite of Harold Landry, we're running. We're running at that edge because we think we can push Caleb Chaisson around, and we're not so sold on Elijah Ponder's discipline just yet. So on the other edge, when you have Harold Landry and Anthony Jennings, we're not going to mess around as much with that side. No. We're attacking Chaisson and Ponder. That's what we're going to do. And they did it. And it worked. And I mean, at times, the offensive line is trying to throw a double team against Chaisson on a run play. And frankly, they did not even need the second blocker. So Caleb Chaisson, before playing for the Patriots, he had played a lot as kind of that pass rusher, kind of substitute role guy. He's out there for a lot of snaps, which we'll get to in a minute. And that means you got to play against the run. And we've seen offenses consistently run at Caleb Chaisson. So that's, part of the problem. And I also think the linebackers at times are getting, mixed up in the wash, so to speak, and not necessarily attacking at the right angles and having the better run fits. And so that's been a problem. But really, you look at that front, that defensive line, and without Milton Williams and without Khyiris Tonga, Cincinnati found some cracks. And those cracks began with Milton Williams, but they've grown and grown and grown without Milton Williams. The other part of the defensive line is, and I know I've said this, I sound like a broken freaking record at this point, but Caleb Chaisson and Harold Landry, it's not a consistent pressure. It's just not. Harold Landry did not get much pressure at all in this football game against the Bengals. Caleb Chaisson had some pressures, but it's not a consistent pressure. It's not like, every passing drop back, you have a tackle, looking like he's on skates, just trying to hold back Caleb Chaisson. There was a stretch where Caleb Chaisson he was dominating football games. That's not necessarily the case now. So Chaisson and Landry, inconsistent. Anthony Jennings was MIA. I watched the All-22. He played 10 snaps. I didn't see him do much of anything. I thought Elijah Ponder did not do a whole heck of a lot. I thought he was better last week than he was this week, so I don't think Ponder did too much. And when you're watching the film, you're watching this all play out. With the inconsistent pressure, Joe Flacco had 2 to 3 great opportunities that he just missed. He missed. Whether he found the receiver he should have found and just missed the throw, or missed the receiver that was wide open. He had 2 or 3 great opportunities in this game to make the Patriots defense pay, and mostly it's because he wasn't getting a ton of heat. Now, I know people will sit there and they'll look at this, and the next gen stats will tell us that the Patriots had 41% pressure, and it was a top 5 or top 8 pressure rate. I'm just telling you, watching the All-22, the eye test tells me that the pressure was not overwhelming whatsoever for Joe Flacco. And as a matter of fact, I'll keep going to the time to pressure stat. Because, yes, the Patriots, when you look at their pressure rate has been around the top 10 all year long. However, when you look inside the numbers and you look at how long it's taking their pass rush to get home, to get that pressure on the quarterback, it's been closer to like 20th in the league. And again, against Cincinnati, before Monday Night Football, the Patriots were 16th out of 26 teams in time to pressure. So below average. And we've seen that. So they're getting pressure rate, but there's a lot of context with that. How long is the quarterback holding on to the football? We talk quick pressures against the Giants. We're going to talk about it. Against the Giants, Abdul Carter, those guys, quick pressures. Patriots, not so much. And the other part of this is Chaisson and Landry. We talked about this around the trade deadline. Again, on Sunday against Cincy, both Chaisson and Landry were above 70% of the snaps. Landry still doesn't look the same. He's dealing with a knee now, and that's a problem. And Chaisson probably wearing down because he's going to absolutely blow by his career high in snaps this season. It's not even going to be close if he continues to play the amount he's played. And so as these guys continue to rack up 70+% of the snaps, I continue to ask, what are they going to look like by the time you get to Buffalo, Baltimore, you get to the playoffs? You are asking a lot from Chaisson and Landry right now. Now, the good news, I thought Corey Durden played well against the run and the pass. I thought Christian Barmore played well. And I wonder, does Joshua Farmer get another shot? Kind of interesting that he was a healthy inactive against Cincinnati because he had been playing snaps before, he came up with an injury and, sat out last week. He ends up being a healthy inactive. So will Joshua Farmer find himself back in the rotation? I wouldn't mind seeing it. Now, of course, I don't know if something happened behind closed doors. I have no idea why he was a healthy scratch, but I would like to see Farmer back on the field. I really would. I'd give him a shot over Gregory right now. All right, 2 telling stats about the Pats' run game and a number of all 22 takeaways next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Now, at the time of recording this, and by the way, don't forget to like, comment, and sub, I have watched most of the Patriots-Bengals game on the All-22. Why most? Because NFL Plus is dragging their feet getting the All-22 out. So I was able to watch all of the game up until the final offensive possession and the final defensive possession. At the time of recording, those 2 drives were unavailable to me. So with that said, wanted to let you all know that. Some all-22 takeaways. Let's start with Travion Henderson. I thought he was fine. I did not think he was great. I did not think he was outstanding. He mostly got the yards that were there. The one thing I would say after watching Henderson all season long, including on Sunday against Cincinnati, on the inside the tackle runs, it feels like he's just not going to bounce those out. He's not going to bounce those out. And sometimes he misses cutback lanes. So when you see these outside zone runs, when you see them, give the ball to Henderson and he's going outside the tackles, when he's given some space, you'll see a little bit of a cutback, right? A little bit of a wiggle. He did that against the Jets on one of his touchdown runs where he made a guy miss because he just cut it in a little bit. On these in between the tackles, on these interior runs, he's had some opportunities to bounce some of those runs out and break it to the edge. He's had some opportunities to find the cutback lane, and he just doesn't do it, or at least doesn't do it on a consistent basis. So, I wonder if you continue to run Henderson inside the tackles, if he's ever going to be that type of bounce out guy who all of a sudden, one jump cut and he's taking it, 75 yards, at least consistently. So we'll see, not consistently 75 yards, but consistently making that bounce cut or bouncing out or finding the cutback lane. Because I do think when you watch the film, there are runs for Henderson that he could get more, but he doesn't get those. And I'm not sitting here telling you that he's, a bad running back. He's obviously not. He's talented. He's got, a few elite traits in his back pocket. It's just when you watch him on these interior runs, I was expecting maybe a little bit more wiggle, a little bit more bounce out, a little bit more find the cutback lane and make defenses pay. He hasn't done that. Maybe he will get better at it. Maybe he will get there. Tony Du's running backs coach. Maybe he will end up developing and finding that and having a little bit better vision on these inside runs. But for this part of the season, it pretty much is what it is. An interesting stat, or a couple of stats about the Patriots run game on Sunday. Rushing yards before contact, the Patriots were 4th out of 26 teams. So that tells you the offensive line was getting decent push. They were the 4th best team heading into Monday Night Football, the 4th best team this week in rushing yards before the running back was even contacted. An even more telling stat is that the Patriots, while they were 4th in yards before contact rushing, they were last in yards after contact. They got hit, they went down. So that would tell you the running backs were not as good as they, could have been getting those extra yards. And that's mostly Travion Henderson, but I do think Ramondre Stevenson didn't help. When you've got, 6 carries for 5 yards, that's going to hurt. And I'm not sure how healthy Ramondre Stevenson was on Sunday. But you need more. You can't be last in yards after contact. If you have that stat, you're not going to have a good rushing week. Goal line issues. All right. We talked about the goal line issues because it was obvious the red zone offense was a struggle against Cincinnati. We talked about it in live postgame, but now watching the all 22, I could really dive into what the problems were. And frankly, you had different culprits on different plays. So here are some examples in the third quarter, not all of them. Here are some examples from the third quarter with those goal line issues. 1st and goal from the 5-yard line, 11:16 on the clock. It is a quarterback run play. Looks like a designed quarterback run for Drake May. Caisson Boutte is confused. He doesn't really block anybody, so the edge isn't sealed and the play is pretty much wasted. 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line. 10:23 left in the quarter. Mike Onwenu. This is the play where Mike Onwenu steps on Drake May's foot. Even though Onwenu steps on May's foot, May still has a shot at Hunter Henry as he's rolling out. It's not initially there, but then Henry kind of breaks in and the linebacker falls. And May has, he has an opportunity there, but he just waits a beat too late. And because he waits just a beat too late, the linebacker gets back into the play and breaks up the pass. That's the difference in the NFL. We're talking about tight windows, especially down in the red zone. Timing has to be, nearly flawless. And for whatever reason, May did not let it rip. He was just a beat too late. PBU instead of touchdown. Then you had a 1st and goal from the 1-yard line, 10:15 on the clock. This was the Terrell Jennings run. Your offensive line stunk. Morgan Moses, Onwenu, Garrett Bradbury, Will Campbell, they were all bad on the play, had no chance. 4th and goal from the 1-yard line, 7:54 left on the clock in the third quarter. This was a read option from the shotgun, and Drake May looks like he made the wrong read. He gives it to Ramondre Stevenson. The play has no chance because both of the edges are crashing down. If May holds on to this football and keeps it, it might end up being a touchdown. Goal line issues in the fourth quarter. 1st and goal from the 4-yard line, 7:32 left in the game. This was a half-field read for May on a bootleg. Nobody's open, so you can't do anything about it. 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line, 6:49 left in the game. This was the tush push. When you're talking about the tush push, you've got to get low. You've got to get low to the field. It's all about getting lower than the guy across from you. Mike Onwenu and others did not do that, and the play's blown up. It has no chance. So overall, the offensive line needs to be better. Drake May, two times, I think he had opportunities there, just wasn't able to get it done. And, so you look at all of these different issues, and it's really a different culprit on each play. Some other numbers from the game against Cincy. The Patriots did not blitz hardly at all in this game. They were dead last in blitz rate heading into Monday Night Football. They only blitzed 10.3% of the time. Interesting. They did not go after Joe Flacco, played a lot of coverage. They were third. Here's something the Patriots did really well. The Patriots were third best heading into Monday Night Football for the week in yards after the catch over expected, -8 yards. They gave nothing to Cincinnati beyond what they should have gotten. They also kept T. Higgins in check, which helps that number. T. Higgins had only 5 catches for 31 yards. Of course, he did draw the big defensive pass interference against Carlton Davis. Watching that play over again, it might have been a tougher call than we might have thought initially against Davis, because it looks like T. Higgins kind of hugs Davis before Davis starts to hug him. It is what it is. Cincinnati, meanwhile, they blitzed. They blitzed Drake May a decent amount. They had the 6th highest blitz rate heading into Monday Night Football. 30.6% of the time they blitzed the Patriots. And Evan Lazar had the numbers. May, surprisingly, was not very good against the blitz. He was 3 of 10 for 34 yards and a sack against the blitz. Now, some of that is on May, and I think some of that is some late defensive line movement in games played by Cincinnati's front. All right, that wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Thank you for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer. Reach out to me on Twitter at Nick C Radio, and don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. Hit that like button and subscribe. And for your second listen, get a double dose of Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler the Madman Rowland and Tony Wiggins. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you. We will see you tomorrow.